Okay, everyone. So, thank you so much. I hope that you met at least 2 new people. I'd love to invite to the stage Tracy Koo, who's the tech reporter at the Wall Street Journal. She will be leading us through this panel. She will be moderating this panel. And again, the speakers, Dennis Clark, managing partner at Xeon Ventures, Paulina Sizdek, the investment principal at E12 Ventures, and Chai-Min Lai, the general partner at First Light Capital. Everybody, please join me in welcoming them to this. A big round of applause.
All right, welcome everyone. We are here to talk about where smart money goes in physical AI and humanoids robots. I have 3 investors with me who are actively investing in this space. So Dennis from Xeon Ventures, Paulina from Z12 Ventures, and Chiami from First Light Capital. Welcome. So before we start, can I ask each of you to give us a quick introduction of yourself and your fund, and how do you feel about physical AI right now? Dennis?
Sure, I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dennis Clark. I'm managing partner at Xeon Ventures. Xeon Ventures is a deep tech venture capital firm backed by Xeon Corporation. We invest primarily in Series A and B startups in North America and Europe. Maybe just a little quick background on Xeon for your benefit. So Xeon is a Japan-based elastomer, polymer, and specialty materials company. There's a good chance you've touched a product with Xeon materials today. The smartphone in your pocket may have optical film from Xeon. If you have an automobile, the tires, the belts, the battery may have Xeon materials. So we kind of use that lens in looking at business opportunities and investments. We've done about 18 investments since we started the fund, and most recently did a really exciting investment in physical AI, which I hope to talk to a little bit later. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for hanging in here until the very last session. I'm Paulina. I'm with E12 Ventures. The fund is co-managed by Mitsui and Morado Ventures. We are based in Silicon Valley. We invest in early-stage startups. I focus on industrial technology, which includes manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, construction, robotics, humanoids, obviously. Before I was with Bosch Ventures, and before then I was in banking, working across Europe for a couple of companies. Thank you for having us. Excited to be here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chai-Min Lai. Great to be here. I'm general partner of First Light Capital, based in Tokyo. Our fund actually invests in early stage from C to Series A. The thesis is more on AI, automation, and also physical AI. And myself, I do invest a lot of industrial-related AI solution as well as physical AI. And recently, we also invest in physical AI-related startup here in Japan, mainly in construction. Looking forward to talk with Denise and Pauline and Tracy.
Great. So let's start with where you are putting your money. So right now, what is one type of the company that you're most excited to invest in? Is it like a robotic arm or robots for companionship or something else entirely?
I can start. I was thinking about it for quite a while, and I learned that there is huge need for welders. You know that we need 400,000 people to do the work. So I think welding automation is super exciting these days. Also not because we don't have people to do that. People shouldn't be doing this. Do you know that 44% of people who are doing the welding get lung cancer, for example, because they are exposed to fumes? So I feel like industrial tech, the jobs that are really not meant to be done by people, should be automated. So all kinds of automation, not necessarily humanoid, it can be any other form that can do the work, would be more than welcome.
are in. So since I'm sitting in Japan, I look heavily in a lot of industrial related, just like Pauline said. But to be more specific, I do see that in Japan we do have our advantage in, for example, construction and also infrastructure. For example, you see the train, you see a lot of electricity. It requires a lot of human labor, but it's also very dangerous. So those are the area that I will heavily look into to making sure that we can actually increase the efficiency as well as reduce the dangers here.
Great. So as I mentioned, we're backed by a large materials company. So we're very interested in companies that are doing innovative things with both hardware and software. One area that we're very excited about is dextrous intelligence for industrial applications. Earlier this week, we made an announcement that we made a strategic investment and a strategic partnership in Sanctuary AI.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good one.
One of the pioneers in this field of dexterous manipulation specifically. And along with the investment, we're partnering with them to work on materials for dexterous hands and end effectors. And this is actually a really interesting problem that's not solved yet. You need to find the right balance of materials that have softness, suppleness, as well as the ruggedness to handle continual operation in an industrial environment. And we hope to work together and come up with a really unique solution that could be applicable to robotics broadly.
Can I add one more thing? Since you mentioned announcement, I can maybe highlight one of our portfolio companies, Gideon, which is a company that is doing autonomous forklifts, loading and unloading trailers. Very exciting company, maybe old school problem, but yeah, amazing traction with also some local Japanese market players.
Sure. I guess we can talk about business model a bit. So when you talk to a physical AI company, what kind of business model that actually gives you confidence? Does it really matter if they tell you that, well, we don't see a very clear path to generate a revenue now? Will you still invest?
You start from no revenue, so it wouldn't be no. Also in the near future, we know it takes time when it comes to business model. Nobody would buy or sign up for a 5-year contract after one meeting. So I think we understand that, and it's quite common to invest in companies without revenue as long as there is strong product and concept, some validation. But also when it comes to business model, it's helpful when there is robotics as a service model versus hardware sale. It may be easier for customer to absorb, try it out, because you just replace recurring salary with like recurring tech fee. But also hardware, I think customers are open to pay upfront because they know in the long term it's actually better and cheaper. And we know it's not gonna be better. They will need these machines. So I heard from customers that as long as the robot can do the work and do more than one task, it's already a benefit for them when it comes to reliability as well.
Yeah, I think it really depends, as a VC, depends on which stage that you're investing in, right? So if we were investing seed, of course, they won't have revenue. In terms of business model, I think most of the startup will actually think about a robot as service. But I think right now, the biggest problem for physical AI startup is not the revenue model. It's most of the case that they will start with a POC, right? And then doing the POC is project based. But how do you actually convert the project base to the actual revenue stream continuously? That's the biggest challenge right now most of the team will have. And I think this probably will develop to the next level, which will be result based, meaning how much task that you actually achieve by using robotics. That will be probably the change in terms of revenue model.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate this. I think business model depends in some ways on the sector and the application. But I think that obviously robotics as a service is a kind of an established business model. But I do think it's going to shift as the performance of automation performance and robots performance gets better. You know, today it's primarily by hour, by day, but I think we may see it shift by task performed successfully, almost to like mimic, as we see with generative AI, we see tokens, we see API calls for AWS. I think we're going to see the business model shift in that direction as the technology can perform at that level, and that better aligns the end user with the robotics provider, and that they're having successful outcomes.
Yeah, the token concept is very interesting because we already see it in large language models, right? So if we talk about humanoids robots, is there a specific task or scenario that you feel like it is actually the better economic choice rather than just the cooler one?
I'm probably going to give the answer that you guys don't agree, but at this right now, I don't think so. I think the short term, in terms of ROI, it's really hard to justify humanoid. But if you actually split arm, or it's different type of shape. I think just what Dennis is saying, how much you can implement and making sure the customer's task is finished. So if you think that way, then maybe humanoid is not a best form in the industry. But then if you think about the household, then it's a different story. But how far are we, or how close are we in the household, that's different kind of discussion. So I will take the star, you guys can jump in.
No, I think there is no one answer. It cannot be that one robotics form is best for everything, for 100% of the task. There are some specificities that you may need either arm or wheelbase or humanoid at some spaces that you cannot fit in any other robot. So I think it will evolve. There will be not one solution for everything. And I think everyone agree that we need to be flexible. And it's cool to have the humanoid robot, and probably for all the entertainment markets, it's doing pretty well. But for the industrial tasks, sometimes it's better to have some hydraulic and maybe bigger robots, or just arm to move things around, or even like the wheelbase. Yeah, I agree.
Dennis, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I concur with everybody here. I think the definition of humanoid may change over time as well. I agree. I think bipedal is overkill for a lot of applications. It's cool, right? I think we all love the parkour videos of robots doing cool stuff. But the reality is that it's, commercial applications is about function and achieving tasks and doing things productively. And in many cases, a bipedal robot is not that, but it can still be a humanoid if it understands the environment, can communicate the human computer interaction, is that of a human, and maybe has maybe dextrous hands to perform human-like tasks and add value that way.
I think there's a discussion how do we define the shape of a humanoid, right? There's right now a lot of robotics look like human, but then is that the optimum goal of a humanoid? I think there's a lot of discussion in the industry as well. So I agree with what Pauline was saying, and you, Dennis, is like what type of shape that we are actually able to implement inside in the house or in the industry. That's also a very interesting discussion we have right now in the industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we mentioned the cost that is still expensive to make a humanoid robot. So what is the bottleneck now that limits the skill and application scenarios of humanoid robots?
I mean, I think one bottleneck that was talked about today is data, right? And embodied data or high fidelity data, right? I mean, all of the progress that large language models have made is based on basically scouring the internet for text and training the model over time that way. That corpus of data doesn't exist, to my knowledge, for humanoids and physical AI at scale. And so that's one of the real bottlenecks. The other bottleneck, I think, for robots is especially if they're mobile, is power management, right? That's something that we're interested in as a battery material supplier. A lot of these robots, for them to perform tasks over a long period of time, the power management software, the battery needs to get better, and that's one of the bottlenecks.
Yeah, and these are great 2 points, and also the hardware component and the cost. But I look at it from a little bit different angle. I also see bottleneck in the form of us and humans, because if we are not open to implement some technologies and humanoids, it's not gonna happen. So it must start from people who are open, excited, who want to do that. because I think people are bottleneck because they are in the factories, they are in these production sites. If they are not really open or excited, or if they don't see the value, it will not go to the market.
I actually have an interesting story to share what Pauline was saying. I think at one point is accuracy. What do I mean by that? Just like you said, open-minded, right? I was talking with one Japanese potential customer, and I asked them, what is the bottleneck for you guys to implement, humanoid or robotics? He said to me that, you know what, we are very tolerant to people making a mistake. But once the machine makes a mistake, just one time, they will say, this doesn't work. So it relates to what you just said, the mentality, right? So as a human, if we work in a factory, we sometimes make a mistake. And it's okay that human makes a mistake. But if you actually deploy, like POC, if the robot doesn't have accuracy, then the company will say, okay, this doesn't work. We're not going to do the implementation. So I do agree with you that the mentality, the adoption needs to be there to make sure the whole industry will progress. Just to add example.
Yeah, just quick comment about this not being forgiven. We expect a lot sometimes and too quickly. And I think as long as the robot can do the job, reliably, I think even not in the human speed, maybe a little bit slower, I think it still matters, right? Customers are saying that the fact that the job is done reliably without any disruptions and like people can have from time to time is still a huge value, because it's not about many times and not always. It's not about increasing efficiency. Many times it's about sustaining the operations that we have in order to produce things that we already need to produce, right? Not really bring some efficiencies up. So I think we also want to highlight the reliability and being a little bit more forgiven that it may not be perfect, but if it brings value, I think we are going in the right direction.
Sure. I think we can talk about Japan a bit since we're all here in Tokyo. So Japan has deep roots in robotics, and there are real urgency here about the aging population, labor shortage. So do local Japanese startups have an edge in the global market, and where do you see that edge comes from? Maybe we start with someone who's based in Japan.
I think yes and no. Sorry to be vague. I do see Japanese startup, they have edge in terms of, I would say, if you want to compete with China and US, you really need to have large capital here in the market. But unfortunately, we don't really have that such big capital market here in Japan. So we have to play smarter. So if as a startup, then how to play smarter is to be more specific in certain area. So I would suggest startup to look into the industry more in the physical operation that Japan has advantage. As I mentioned in the beginning, like construction, infrastructure, a lot of area, manufacturing, logistics, a lot of area Japan has been building for the past 30 years. It has its advantage, and how to leverage that, that's one. Two, we don't invest, but I do see there's a lot of opportunity on material, as what Dennis was saying. A lot of in the parts, they still have a lot of knowledge out there. Then how we can convert that knowledge from industrial robots to humanoid, that could be another play that I think a lot of Japanese startup can actually look into.
Dennis or Paulina, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I agree. Maybe Japan doesn't have hundreds of humanoid robots or billions of dollars in investors' pockets, but I think you are one of the first countries that raised a hand and is open to try things. And it was so refreshing when I talked to people here locally that you don't need to explain why automation, right? People just get it here, which is amazing. So I think that the awareness of the problem, being open and excited, even if the technology or innovation doesn't come from the country, it can be brought in here and implemented. I think this is very, very unique and different and really positive that I'm seeing. So the perception and being so open to innovation, even if the ecosystem is maybe still not fully developed and is growing.
Yeah, I think this kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, you know, and this was talked about by other presenters today, this demographic pull, right, from the need for labor here in Japan, the growing need, I think is a big edge for Japanese startups to go to market maybe quicker than other areas. And, you know, I think that Japan as a society is accepting of automation and AI, where we're seeing, for example, in North America, there's pushback, right? And maybe some segments of the population are less accepting of AI being more part of our daily lives and automation taking over, you know, more parts of what traditionally humans would do. The second edge, I think, that Japanese startups have, and I know there's a bunch of startups here in the audience, and I wanted to encourage you, you're in close proximity to some of the top global suppliers in some of these really important categories in robotics, whether it's actuators, whether it's sensors, whether it's, you know, drives. That like frictionless interaction that you can have with some of the world leaders here is an edge, right? For companies in North America, even at larger scale, they maybe have a little bit more challenges partnering and communicating with companies here in Japan. And so I would encourage startups to think of that here locally as an edge. And the other thing, I think, is that there are a lot of incumbents here that desire to do things. We had many of them present today at the cutting edge of robotics, and they have really amazing technologies and people. But due to the nature of a large company, they cannot move as quickly as startups. And so there's a real opportunity to partner with some of the incumbents. Initially, they may have, you know, this like not invented here syndrome, but eventually they'll come around when they see the speed that you can move, when you're able to attract talent that they cannot, just by virtue of the culture that you can create inside of a startup. So I think I'm bullish about companies, startups in Japan, but there are challenges, capital being one of them, software talent being another.
Sure. So if we zoom out a bit globally, do you see there are any like meaningful difference between EU, US, and Asia when they approach physical AI?
Yeah, I think I come from Europe, so I can speak to that country. Like Asia is a little bit new to me. I started working with Japan like last year, so maybe I'm not that experienced yet. But I think Europe is smart. They are slow, but they focus on important things, and they will get there. When we look at the number of companies or humanoid companies, when we count them, it's like more than 300 or even more right now as we speak. I think 80% is in Asia, so we can also see the speed. But Asia versus the US, I think it's a little bit different approach. We more focus on the brain, on the intelligence, on the software. I think Asia and China is really excellent when it comes to manufacturing and hardware, and they can like build within a day. And just we see Unit 3 everywhere, right? In most of the slides, the robot was there, which is amazing because it helps all the labs and startups to test things, and we need it. But there are different approaches. Yeah, I think there are like a few thoughts. The market is big enough, so there will be more than one winner. And there are different focuses when it comes to specialization. And when you like combine it all together, companies cannot exist in isolation, right? There are a lot of stakeholders around, and they need to work together. So I think there are a lot of overlaps between countries, and they need each other. As you mentioned, right, when it comes to components or like some supply chain, I think there will be collaboration rather than like a huge competitive war in that matter.
I can just quickly jump in. I think I see Asia, for example, Korea, China, or Japan. Those three countries see physical AI as their next 10 years industrial potential. Because, okay, China is not, but LLM, if you look at AI in the software, I think Japan or Korea, we didn't really get into that race. But then if you look at the physical AI, a lot of manufactured parts is really related to automobile. So we can actually replicate a lot of experience in this industry, convert that to physical AI. So I think a lot of the way that those countries are doing is government driven. That's one thing I see the difference, yeah.
Sure. So one last question for each of you. So what will everyone be in this room be surprised by 2030?
That manufacturing jobs will be cool again. People will not need to work, and they will just, hang out and play with robots and just manage them. I think we can be surprised how it will evolve in the job type of matter.
Dennis?
Yeah, so I think in the next, 3 to 5 years to get us to 2030, I think one of the surprising things we're going to see is the industry dynamics. So there's going to be, consolidation. There's going to be M&A. There's going to be strategic partnerships that are cross-sector, cross-border, right? And they're going to be really interesting. And I think I see this kind of excitement around physical AI and humanoid very similar. I spent about a decade in automotive and in and around autonomous vehicles. And it's a lot of the same players. It's a lot of the same dynamics. And we saw that early on in autonomous vehicles. And so I think, it won't be unusual. I don't know, just throw an example out there, like maybe we see a Toyota partnering with a Palantir, or a SpaceX or a Blue Origin acquiring a Japanese startup that does robotics in space. These kind of things I think we'll see increasingly more and more, and some of the combinations will be surprising.
If it's 2030, I will be more negative that the industry doesn't develop as we expected. So it's going to be disappear again to just like 10 years ago when we do the autonomous driver. That might be another big surprise. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you to our great speakers, and thank you all for being here. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What an incredible panel. Thank you so much, everyone. If I can invite you down here.